Snow drifted across the valley in thin, wind-carved ribbons, soft enough to seem harmless yet cold enough to bite through exposed skin like glass. The human soldier felt each sting but gave no reaction, his breath steady beneath the matte mask that concealed everything except a narrow glint of his eyes. The aliens surrounding him had expected fear, confusion, maybe trembling. Anything to confirm their assumption that the lone Terran they had cornered was an ordinary infantryman. Instead, he walked through the frozen clearing with his hands bound and his posture calm, as though captivity were an inconvenience rather than a threat. 3 species composed the improvised capture team, their weapons mismatched and their voices tense. The tallest, a reptilian commander with a cracked crest, kept glancing at the human's heavy cloak draped over his armored shoulders. It was not military standard, not by any known catalog. It looked handmade, reinforced, and deliberately intimidating. "Strip the cloak," the commander ordered, trying to mask his unease with authority. 2 subordinates approached, gripping tools designed to dissolve metals, but hesitation slowed their steps. The human watched them without flinching, his gaze colder than the air. When they finally tugged, the cloak free, revealing layered plating and an array of compact devices strapped to his chest, several aliens stepped back. "This is no scout," muttered a shorter insectoid officer, antennae twitching. "Terrans don't issue equipment this advanced to basic soldiers." The human offered no clarification. He simply tilted his head as if studying their movements, mapping their fear. They marched him toward a transport skimmer half buried in snowdrifts. Even the vehicle seemed reluctant to remain in the valley. Its engines hissed with inconsistent shivers. As they pushed him inside, one alien jabbed a translator node against his wrist and snapped, "State your unit." The human raised his eyes slowly, letting silence stretch long enough to erode their confidence. "Doesn't matter," he said at last, his voice low and even. The reptilian commander recoiled, surprised the prisoner had spoken at all. Most humans in these circumstances begged, cursed, or attempted negotiation. This one sounded almost bored. Inside the transport, the cramped interior buzzed with static from failing comlink. Alien soldiers argued over protocols, how to process the prisoner, whether to signal their superiors, whether Terran retaliation would follow. Each discussion circled back to the same unsettling observation. The human had allowed himself to be captured. His weapons lay on the valley floor, both deliberately placed rather than dropped in desperation. His armor contained no emergency beacon, no distress flare, nothing to indicate he had tried to call for help. The insectoid officer finally asked the question plaguing all of them. "Why were you alone?" The human leaned back against the cold bulkhead and answered, "I wasn't." The lights flickered at that moment, not from dramatic timing, but from the skimmer's failing power cells. Yet the coincidence tightened every alien throat. The reptilian commander slammed a clawed hand against the console, trying to re-establish a comlink, but the static only deepened into a low, pulsing hum. The human closed his eyes briefly, not in resignation, but in calculation. His calmness was its own kind of violence, pressing against the cramped walls until even the bravest among his captors shifted away from him. When the skimmer lurched upward, finally lifting from the valley floor, a fragment of encrypted Terran transmission bled through the static. Sharp, mechanical, impossible to mistake. One alien amplified it, hoping to decipher strategic data, but the message contained only a single word, repeated twice, as if the sender assumed context was unnecessary. "Reaper, Reaper." The alien stared at the bound human, realizing the message was not a warning to him, but a warning about him. And though none dared speak, every one of them felt the same sudden truth settle like frost along their spine. They had taken the wrong hostage. The conference chamber inside the alien outpost was built for efficiency, not comfort, yet every occupant sat as though balancing on the edge of a blade. The reptilian commander paced along the circular table, claws tapping a rapid staccato that betrayed agitation he refused to voice. The insectoid officer positioned beside him adjusted the translator nodes, antennae flicking with restless energy. A pair of avian tacticians perched stiffly on narrow seats, wings tight against their bodies as though bracing for impact. None of them looked at the human prisoner directly, though he remained seated in the corner under guard, silent and composed. The recorded transmission played again, filling the chamber with that same mechanical intonation. "Reaper, Reaper." It echoed with unsettling clarity, as if spoken from inside their own skulls. The avian tactician clicked his beak anxiously. That designation is not a unit identifier. It might be a threat code. The commander paused his pacing, but did not turn. "Or a title," he replied, voice low enough that the word carried its own weight. The insectoid officer accessed a fragmentary database stolen during past skirmishes with Terran reconnaissance teams. Names and terms flickered across the air in narrow holographic threads, most corrupted or redacted. Still, a particular entry drew immediate attention, a classified Terran combat designation associated with extreme risk missions and near-impossible survival rates. The insectoid officer expanded the entry, revealing a bare outline of a figure shrouded in tactical anonymity. "Reaper-class operatives," he read aloud, "are rumored to function independently for extended periods. High lethality, high adaptability, psychological intimidation protocols." He hesitated before adding, "capabilities unverified." The avian tacticians exchanged glances. "Rumors only," one insisted, though the pitch of his voice betrayed doubt. "Humans exaggerate. They embellish their soldiers to appear more formidable." The reptilian commander swiveled toward him, crest flattening. "Exaggeration does not explain the behavior of our prisoner." He gestured toward the human, who met the motion with a slow, unreadable tilt of his head. Every eye in the room followed. The soldier sat straight-backed, wrists bound loosely now that the aliens felt uncertain about handling him. Though still masked, his presence filled the chamber more heavily than any weapon. He wasn't watching their screens. He was watching them, reading tension, cataloging weaknesses, waiting for information they had not realized they were giving. The insectoid officer clicked nervously. "We must consider the possibility that he truly is a Reaper-class operative." His voice quavered as he added, "If so, keeping him alive might incite unwanted consequences." The avian tactician scoffed, but his wings twitched involuntarily. "Killing him might incite the same consequences," he countered. "Terrans respond poorly when their soldiers vanish without explanation." The reptilian commander stopped pacing and faced the human fully for the first time since dragging him into captivity. "Tell us the meaning of this designation," he demanded. "Is it your name? Your rank? A threat?" The human lifted his bound hands slightly, letting the restraints clink against the metal chair. "It's a call sign," he answered with measured calm. "Nothing more." His tone carried no pride, no bravado, only stark finality. The aliens leaned back as though the words themselves radiated heat. "Why send a call sign instead of an extraction code?" the insectoid officer murmured. The human's eyes narrowed behind the mask. "Because," he said, "anyone who needs more information already knows it." A tremor cut through the chamber floor before the aliens could respond. Dust sifted from the ceiling panels, drifting like a second snowfall. Alarms flickered to life, red lights strobing against the walls. The reptilian commander slammed a claw on the comm console. "Report." Static answered him, followed by a distant reverberation, deep, rhythmic, unmistakable. Something heavy was striking the outer ice fields in calculated intervals. The avian tactician stiffened. "Those are orbital descent signatures." The second tactician whispered, "Terrans?" The human prisoner didn't move, but a subtle shift in his breathing betrayed recognition. The insectoid officer turned toward him slowly, dread hollowing his voice. "Your people are coming, aren't they?" The human let silence speak first. Then, almost gently, he replied, "They started the moment you heard my call sign." The first impact rattled the outpost hard enough that several ceiling panels snapped loose, clattering across the floor like metallic hail. Alien soldiers scrambled into formation, their movements frantic and uneven, while the reptilian commander barked orders that dissolved beneath the rising howl of wind outside. The human prisoner remained seated, hands resting lightly on his knees, posture unchanged. His stillness no longer read as defiance. It felt like foreknowledge. Every alien I kept drifting toward him as though he were the true epicenter of the quake. A second impact thundered through the ice fields, closer this time, unmistakably deliberate. The avian tactician rushed to the nearest viewport. Feathers puffed in alarm. Through the swirling frost, he glimpsed the silhouettes of descent pods, sleek, obsidian shapes melting through the storm like falling shadows. Their landing thrusters burned brief, violent circles into the snow before extinguishing, leaving the valley in eerie silence. The tactician whispered, "No Terran vessel uses that model. Those are Black Ops drops." His voice cracked on the last word. The insectoid officer scrambled to reinforce the doors, mandibles clicking at a frantic rhythm. His hands shook as he activated the shielding grid, though each panel flickered unsteadily under the pressure of the cold. "We cannot allow them ingress," he insisted, more to steady his nerves than to give instruction. The commander shot him a hard look. "We may not have a choice." He turned back toward the human. "Tell them to stand down." The soldier lifted his gaze with slow precision. "They don't respond to voice commands," he said. "They respond to parameters." The implications sat heavy in the room. Whatever parameters had been set, they were already in motion. The first sign of infiltration came not from the doors but from the lights. They dimmed in a smooth, calculated wave before dying altogether. Emergency lamps flickered on, casting the corridors in anemic red. The hum of the outpost's generator stuttered. Avian tacticians drew their weapons, wings trembling despite their efforts to appear disciplined. The insectoid officer whispered, "They're inside already." The reptilian commander bared his teeth in frustration. "Impossible. The perimeter is intact." But even he didn't believe it. A faint metallic scrape echoed from the hallway. Another followed, closer, rhythmic. The guards instinctively raised their rifles toward the sound. They held their breath as shadows elongated across the walls, stretching like living tendrils. Then a figure emerged, tall, armored, face hidden behind a matte visor that revealed nothing. He moved without noise, without hesitation, every step purposeful. Another shadow joined him, then a third. The Reaper extraction team had arrived. The commander fired first, either out of fear or pride. His shot flared in the dark, but the nearest Reaper shifted with inhuman precision, letting the bolt pass by his shoulder. A soft hiss answered as the operative deployed a non-lethal device, releasing a pulse that shorted the commander's rifle and knocked him backward into the wall. The avian tacticians attempted to retreat, but a second operative intercepted them, disabling their weapons without leaving a single burn mark. Each move was efficient, controlled, designed to neutralize, not slaughter. The insectoid officer froze as the third operative approached the human prisoner. Without a word, the newcomer sliced through the restraints and offered a gloved hand. The captive rose fluidly, stretching his shoulders as though waking from brief rest rather than imprisonment. "Took you long enough," he said, voice low but carrying a trace of dry amusement. The operative inclined his head, tone modulated through a vocoder. Traffic in orbit was heavy. The alien stared in disbelief as the reunited soldier retrieved his cloak from the floor, sweeping it over his shoulders with familiar weight. His presence, already unsettling, now radiated command. The reptilian commander struggled to his feet, breath ragged, disbelief clouding his voice. "You were never truly alone." The human adjusted the clasp of his cloak and met the commander's gaze. "I told you that." Another tremor rippled through the outpost, this one different, sharper, signaling that the extraction team had activated the next phase of their operation. The soldier stepped forward, his expression unreadable behind the mask. "This ends now," he said quietly. And though the aliens didn't yet understand the full meaning, they felt the weight of it settle like a final verdict. The outpost shuddered again as the extraction sequence advanced, but the tremor no longer carried the same menace. The aliens felt it instead as an omen, a reminder that whatever happened next depended on the masked human now standing freely among the silent operatives who had come for him. The reptilian commander steadied himself against the wall, pride fighting with fear as he watched the soldier adjust the last buckle of his cloak. The avian tacticians hovered near the doorway, unsure whether retreat or negotiation offered better survival. Even the insectoid officer, usually rigid in protocol, seemed to wilt beneath the tension. None spoke until the human finally shifted his attention back toward them. "You escalated this," the soldier said, his voice calm, yet edged with unmistakable judgment. "You thought a hostage would give you leverage." His gaze swept the room, nowhere hurried, nowhere uncertain. "But you didn't bother to ask who you were taking." The reptilian commander bristled, though he no longer drew himself to full height. "We acted under the assumption that Terrans would negotiate," he replied, trying to salvage authority. "We expected demands, bargaining, diplomacy." The human nodded once, almost sympathetically. "Most would have tried," he agreed. "But you didn't take most." One of the Reaper operatives stepped closer, scanning the chamber with methodical focus. "Extraction corridor secured," he reported. "Hostile resistance minimal." The commander flinched at the word hostile, realizing it now applied to his own forces by default, regardless of intentions. The avian tactician swallowed hard. "If we release you," he ventured, "will your people withdraw?" The human studied him for several long seconds before answering. "We aren't here for conquest," he said. "We came for me. Nothing more." Relief rippled through the room, but it was thin and fragile. The insectoid officer spoke next, voice barely audible. "Then what becomes of us?" The human's posture shifted slightly, signaling the weight of his decision. "That depends on what you do next," he replied. "You took a soldier under false assumptions. You treated him as a tool, but you didn't harm him, and you didn't execute him out of fear. That counts for something." The reptilian commander exhaled shakily, disbelief softening the rigid lines of his jaw. "You mean to spare us?" The soldier tilted his head. "This extraction isn't a punishment mission," he said. "Despite your mistakes, you remain free to choose a better outcome." A distant rumble rolled through the valley, signaling the final approach of the transport that would spirit the Reaper team away. The operatives adjusted formation, creating a protective arc around their recovered comrade. Yet the human lingered, regarding the alien officers with an expression that was neither hostile nor forgiving, simply resolute. "You've learned something today," he continued. "Humans aren't the weakest species. We aren't the strongest either. But we respond." He let the word settle fully. "When you take one of ours, we come back. That's the only truth you need." The avian tactician bowed his head, wings drooping. "We will reconsider our stance toward Terrans," he promised. "Perhaps cooperation is possible." The human didn't nod, but something in his stance softened, a small concession that suggested respect. "Then start by leaving this valley," he said. "My team will depart, and you'll have no reason to fear pursuit, as long as you honor your word." The extraction vessel's engines began to hum outside, their low resonance vibrating through the floor. The human turned toward the exit, cloak trailing behind him like the shadow of a storm finally receding. Before stepping through, he glanced back once. "Let this be the last time you test what a call sign means," he said quietly. Then he followed his team into the cold, leaving the aliens alone with the knowledge that they had survived not by power, but by choosing restraint.